Peacemaker, episode 7. All of the episodes have been really good. Every single one of them, even last season. They haven't really produced a bad episode, and this one is no different. I think that Gunn has a really good idea of what he's going to do with the DCU, and it's coming from Peacemaker. A lot of it is going to come from Peacemaker. He's meshing the TV shows and the movies, which is a good idea because you'll get people who are sitting at home watching TV, hanging out, and they can get a little piece of what's happening. They turn on their TV, oh, this is Peacemaker, and they can watch it. And then when they go to the movies for the grand production, they can say, okay, I know what's going on here. I sat on my couch last week and watched this. So it's good. In this episode, it's primarily about how does that freaking, where'd that freaking doorway come from, man? Because everybody figured Augie was a super genius, man. Adebisi even asks, isn't your dad a super genius? And he's like, nah. And I wondered it also because I'm thinking, no offense to any particular type of people, but he is a redneck guy who is generally not known to be a rocket scientist. I mean, you may have gone to college and your professor might have come out with the mullet and the cowboy hat with a great big mouth of that stuff that they chew on and said, let me tell you about physics. I don't think that ever happened, but it could, I guess. But you don't suspect that that's the way things work. So with Augie, you know, with Peacemaker's father, you're thinking, how'd that dude build this? Was he just like an undercover genius that knew all of these things about space, science, and physics and whatever, and he just pretended not to know anything? That's weird. But it turns out that he really didn't know anything. He found that. Man, he found it. And the reason it's in his house, and another thing I was wondering, if he didn't create it, who created it and put it in his house? And it turns out nobody brought it to him and put it in his house. Nobody created it and brought it there. Those dudes were out hunting, about 30 years ago, which would make Peacemaker about 40, because he had to have been 10 at least, so he's circling 40, and he's out there in the woods 30 years ago with him, his brother, and his pop before his brother died, and they're shooting at things. And you see something in the distance, and I'm looking at it, and I'm watching it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know what, I don't go out there and I hunt deer and stuff like that. So I'm looking, but maybe it's not what is that a deer or bear or wolf or whatever it is that they might be hunting? It looked odd through the foliage, and they shot it and it went over. And I'm like, I'm not sure that was it. Right from the beginning, I'm thinking that wasn't a deer, was it? And they get up on it, and it's a small creature, an alien, other dimensional creature. And my first thought then was, is this an imp? Because they talked about imps before, Maybe this is another dimensional imp, basically a genie. And it wasn't. It's not. And to be completely honest, I actually saw this on a different channel, but it made perfect sense because I know what Gunn is trying to do. He's trying to pull in things into this universe. I think that this might be a bug. A bug is a lower level life form that lives on Apocalypse. Most of their life is in servitude of the new gods, the apocalyptic new gods. So basically, they live their whole life in the shadow of space demons, and looking at it and thinking about the comic books, thinking about the cartoon, thinking about the graphic novels. Yeah, this could be an interpretation of one of those. So if that is the case, then what he opened isn't just an other dimensional vortex, a doorway to another dimension. It's not just a device. That is a form of boom tube, man. And on the other side of a boom tube, there's often dark side and apocalypse. So Chris, through his entire life, has been walking in and out of this doorway, and one of those 100 plus other rooms, one of them, at least one of them, leads to apocalypse. So that's a possibility. So when somebody like Cyborg opens it, he always says, we gotta go to the apocalypse, and he's thinking apocalypse. So maybe he can make the doorway open from one end to the other end, and not just into this void where you got to walk through and there's a bunch of different doors. When in one of the cartoons he sends, and in the comic he sends Darkseid in a deep space, but he's thinking that he's like, I'm going to send him somewhere he'll never return. And he opens it and he sends Darkseid through it, and Darkseid's way out in deep space. Sometimes he opens a boom tube and he goes to different parts of the planet because he can direct it mentally. He has a father box that he can jive with. I don't want to say he can control it, but he can talk to it, and he can send his thoughts to it, and it will acknowledge those thoughts. So he can create boom tubes, doorways that go from point A to point B. Chris and his parents, his father and his brother, didn't know how to do that. So when they open the doorway, it just leads them into the void with a whole bunch of different exits. They say over 100. But to be honest, did he count those? Maybe there's 1,000, and he just figured it's over 100. Maybe he just never counted them and just says it's over 100. Maybe there's more. Maybe there's less, and he didn't count them. But what I think is going to happen by the end of this is either there's going to be an explosion, or Darkseid's going to come through and be like, what the heck? Something's going to happen to destroy that 100 plus rooms and drop it down to just 52, because they're supposed to be in the I don't want to say the main continuity because they keep changing it, but in the basic continuity of DC Comics, of DC Universe, there's 52 other universes, other multiverses, and that's it. What had happened was DC was writing comic books, and then a writer would come in and he'd say, oh, Superman can do this, Martian Manhunter can do that, and then another guy would come in and say, he could do this, he could do that. Let's change Batman's origin slightly, and then make it this. And then finally, in order to make all of that stuff make sense, they said, you know what? When Superman can only jump as high as a tall building, and in another comic he can fly, and in another comic he can breathe in space, these are different universes. They decided to explain it that way. Different universe. So the Superman that you saw that could only jump, that's that dude. Superman that you saw that could fly, that's that dude. Superman that could breathe in space, well, that's that dude. And they were on different planets in different universes. And then eventually, they made it one universe. And that didn't really work out the way they wanted it to. So they went back to multiple universes, but they kept it at a number 52. So things were happening on this planet, this Earth, that Earth, this Earth, that Earth, but it was only 52 pocket dimensions, with the exception of like Apocalypse and certain other places. But basically 52 Earths, basically. And I think what Chris has in his bedroom is a doorway to those earths. Argus is aware of it. And Rick Flag, Senior, who knows that, Chris killed his son. I mean, imagine someone unalived your favorite person in the world, and then all of a sudden you had like Nick Fury type resources, because that's basically what Flag's got. Nick Fury type resources, and I want to point this out again. Tim Meadows is Agent Flurry instead of Fury, so that's a little nod. That's a funny thing that they're doing, but you've got all that resources. You've got agents. You've got all kinds of weapons. You've got people who are assassins. You can make federal charges on people. You can do whatever you want, basically, because you're Nick Fury. That's basically what Rick Flag Sr. is right now. And he's upset with Chris. He's upset with Peacemaker. So he's putting a lot of pressure on him. He's sending basically his Amanda Hill after him. I want this done, I want that done, I want surveillance on him, da-da-da-da-da. And to be a schmuck, he's making one of Peacemaker's friends surveil him, which it's clearly going to be a mistake. If you wanted it done right, you should have put a dude on it that didn't like him, not one of his friends that might, go against you. If he didn't like economists and he put him on and he's like, yeah, I'm waiting for him to make a mistake so I can get him too. He should have just got him. He shouldn't have put him on there because that's going to blow things. He has to know that. But he's got all of this stuff and he's watching them, and they're aware when the doorway opens, and they're waiting for economists to tell them so that they can get there. But my thing is, if they're aware of when it opens, why do they need economists there? What's he doing? He's just sitting in the van looking at the house, eating nuggets, apparently. Good ones, according to Tim Meadows, because he walked up and ate some. But he's sitting outside the house eating nuggets, looking at the house. But way over at Argus, they know when the doorway is being opened. So I don't even know why they put economists there. That's wacky. But in this episode, they decide that they're going to rush his house. So they send some agents, they send some weapons, they send a device that can specifically locate, other dimensional energy so they can find out where the doorway is to the other dimension. And they send that in there. And they send Michael Rooker there. Michael Rooker. And he's playing a guy who is clearly not Native American, and he's appropriating Native American culture. And he wants to kill all of the American eagles for some reason. That's pretty un-American, but he wants to do that. And apparently he's been spending a long time killing eagles for some reason, some type of vendetta, I guess. And he not only appropriated their lifestyle, but apparently somehow he's appropriated their power also, some type of Native American power, because he can generate fields of energy, and he's got he can send his essence, his soul, into space or into the air and track eagles. So he's like floating in the air unbeknownst to eagles following him. And that's how he tracks down Peacemaker, which is crazy. There's a scene where Economos is upset with Tim Meadows, Agent Flurry's character. Agent Flurry has a hard time calling people by their names. He gives them immediately, when he meets them, he gives them nicknames. And he gave Economos the nickname Ginger Cool because he's ginger. He's got the red hair and the such. And he called him Cool because he just wanted to nod at him. He said, "What type of greeting are we using?" And he was like, "Just a nod. I guess that'll be enough." And he said, "Hey, that's cool. Mind if I call you Ginger Cool?" And he told him immediately, "Nah, don't call me that." And he's been calling him that over and over. I think because either he doesn't remember his name or he doesn't care to. He just prefers nicknames because he's giving everybody nicknames. And he calls him that again, and Economist does the worst thing you can do to a person without doing the worst thing. I guess it's not the worst thing because you could do worse stuff, but he does one of the worst things you could do, man. He spews in that dude's face. Oh, Tim Meadows, I wouldn't have thought he was wrong if he'd have pulled out his sidearm and shot Economist 26 times. Of course, reloading a couple times. And everybody in the room should have just stood there and been like, he asked for that. That was bonkers. But Rick Flag sends a bunch of agents there. Well, actually, his sidekick sends a bunch of agents there. And they're going to storm the castle. And on the other side of the wall, the door, Chris is in there. He's had a great time in the other dimension, and he's sleeping it off. And he wakes up and realizes that someone has been in his house because there's bullet holes and everything. He didn't see that before because he came home in a drunken stupor. But he's awake now, and he sees that, and he gets the message: "Hey, man, you better get out of your house. Argus is coming." So he's like, "I got to get out of here." And that's when we discover that the doorway in his bedroom that leads to the other dimension is portable. So he turns it off, closes it up. It's like a big helmet, like a football-sized helmet. And then he walks out of there. He wanders away, goes through the back door. How come nobody was guarding the back door, man? And Judo Master is back. Judo Master is an interesting character. In the comic books, it was a couple of different people, but this particular version of Judo Master I like. And he shows up and he starts beating the brakes off. He catches Chris in the wilderness as he's escaping because Judo Master just knows, man. Judo Master knows. And he catches Chris out in the woods and he's kicking him in the face. And Chris is like, "Wait, hey, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm giving you the business." Actually, what he says is, "I'm not going to let you, destroy humanity like you tried to before, man, because you're a freak." And they fight. And Chris gets the upper hand enough that he can escape. He falls on him. So he runs away. He calls for some backup, and he drives away. Goes to an old cabin that he has out in the woods. They got another cabin, apparently. They were a poor family, but they had a cabin in the woods, at least one. They had that actual house, at least one, and they had a trailer, again, at least one. And they're out in that cabin, and he opens it up and brings the portal there just as the agents of Argus get to his doorway and try to open it up and discover the portal, and it's now gone. So I think that they think that Economist can't be trusted. So Economist is probably in danger now, especially since, he got away with it. He gave Michael Rooker's character on the forehead. He shoved him down when he was going to shoot Eagly. And now Michael Rooker's character thinks Eagly is some kind of eagle god and figures if he kills them, he'll get rid of all the eagles. So he really wants to kill Eagly now. He's a weird dude. He's kind of a weird racist dude. He keeps calling Judo Master Chinaman. And he told him he's not from China. And he's like, China? So, so this was a good episode. There was a lot of things happening. I think them opening and closing that doorway is going to lead to something. Something's going to happen with the alien that lives in one of the doorways near Chris's doorway that keeps coming out and throwing stuff in that furnace. Something's going to happen with that dude because he's in the beginning credits. He's in the beginning model, the beginning dance off. He's dancing in the background. So he is a part of the story. Everyone that's in that dance off is a part of the story. There's only a few episodes left. So they've got to start closing some of this stuff up. Not everything, because it's going to lead to a movie. But they got to start making some of this make sense. Also to lead to the movie. So when you get to the movie, you're like, oh, that's why that thing happened. You know, oh, okay, yeah, we get that. They bought ham, they bought turkey, they bought bread, they bought mayonnaise, they bought mustard. They were making a sandwich. Things have to lead to the sandwich, man. So they've got to build towards that sandwich so we know where they're going so we can follow the story. So it's got to be coming to that fairly soon. And I'm all in for it, man. I'm all in for it. I think I would give this episode of Peacemaker not the best episode so far. It was informative. It got a lot of information, and I think that Tim Meadows is probably going to kill the Economist because he spit in his face, and he definitely did not appreciate that. So he's got to be thinking about that. So I would give this episode of Peacemaker 7 bags of popcorn. 7 bags of popcorn. Because that's what I think about that. More importantly, what do you think about that? Now that you had a chance to look at the video, let's talk about it some more in the comments. And as always, if you like the video, if you like the content, subscribe. And then like.